I want to introduce today's panelists. We're happy to have folks from different backgrounds with different experiences and different industries, right? So we have. I want to welcome. It's a pleasure to welcome Saurabh Gupta. So Saurabh works as a general manager of data science at Michelin. Every time I hear Michelin, more than the tires, I remember what comes to my mind is a Michelin star restaurant, right? So I'm sure there's a linkage there, but fascinating that Michelin is actively setting up a data organization, data-driven culture, which you are leading to bring AI transformation in your products, right? More curious now to see how is a tire company thinking about this. I'm sure it's not just a tire company, I'm just kidding, right? But after seeing the last session, what goes on into a biryani, I'm just blown away, right? And
Yep.
now I'm not even, questioning that, any product can effectively use data science and machine learning, right? But our focus for this discussion is going to be around data skills, customer context, and business context for data science managers, right? I think this is a very important role that is growing in demand, so we'll spend more time on that. Saurabh also holds a master's degree from BITS Pilani and a management degree from Harvard Business School. More importantly, I think so we should all check this out, that he's also a published author. Congratulations on that. I think your most recent book is about practical enterprise and data lake insights, right? So clearly a good book for people who are interested in data engineering and data analytics, I'm sure. So you've written several other books before, but I think this is one of the latest one. I also hear that your favorite hobby is storytelling. And I'm sure either you are practicing this as a craft to convince your stakeholders about investing more in data organization, or vice versa, convincing your daughter to do what you want her to do, right? So either way, storytelling is a very, very interesting and important component, right? Thanks for being here, Saurabh.
Thanks, Arun.
To the questions in a minute, right? So I'd like to next invite Arun Krishnaswamy. So Arun, if you could go on video and say hi so that we can put a name to your face.
Yeah, sure. I hope you can see me.
Yes, and thanks for joining so early in the morning from the US, Arun. I truly appreciate you doing this. Arun is a director of data science at Workday. I'm sure many people who work in enterprise software, enterprise technology are very familiar with Workday. Started off with the HCM, human capital management, financial management, and ERP, and pretty much the whole business suite of software, if you will, right? And Arun is focused on building the next generation machine learning platform for Workday. And I'm sure we're going to hear how you're setting up your team to do this, what is required as part of the team, skills and everything, right? And Arun has also built from the scratch a lot of data, teams, right? At startups, at Visa, at Microsoft, at Yahoo. So very rich experience, setting up and leading teams there. Again, welcome, Arun. I'm a equally great fan, just as you, of Ilaiyaraaja music. So that's something, at least I'm not a machine learning guy. I'm a products guy, but at least we have that in common. So maybe we should share some amazing Tamil songs later, right? So thanks
Sure.
again, welcome for joining the discussion.
Definitely.
So, last but not least, as I said, we have diverse panel here, right? One coming from a so-called non-tech company and products, which is Michelin, and we have Workday, which is enterprise B2B, and we have Muthuraj, who has done an amazing job of facilitating the open conference till about a few years ago, back to back. Muthu, you can also turn on your video and say hi to our audience. Muthu comes from the product background, right? So he's a product manager and a product leader at Intuit. Can we do a quick sound check with you, Muthu, to see if you have joined as well?
Yes, hi, good to be back.
Okay, great, awesome.
Yeah.
So you seem to have shifted to a much more serene environment now.
Yeah.
Virtually at least.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. So Muthu was a product manager at SAP. He now is a product leader at Intuit. And for many of you who know Intuit is an amazing company that creates financial software, accounting software for typically small, medium businesses, predominantly, right? Both, predominant market is in the US, but also in India and other places. So Muthu will bring in the product perspective in our conversation, especially around data science teams, data science management, right? So let's, what I want to do is, as I said, it's Saturday evening. It's people are, I'm sure, exhausted and wanting to get back to their dinner. So what we could do is take a more engagement approach, right? So something that we can, ask the teams or the audience also to participate. So I'm going to start off with, asking a poll, right? So just so all of you know and understand what the sentiment of the audience right now. And some of these polls we've asked earlier in previous days, but I think it's a very relevant one for this context. So kind of put this together just so you get the example of, or the sampling of what the audience is. So if you can bring up that poll quickly to see what describes, the audience sentiment around the topic today, which is the data science manager itself, right? And, we'll see if the responses are any different than the previous day that we launched this, but this should give you a good perspective of what our audience is thinking right now. Now, feel free to debunk this, and I'm going to go to each one of you to give your perspective on these things. But it looks like a majority of the folks are saying data science manager is actually product manager with strong data science skills, right? Now that's interesting. Maybe some of you may want to contest that and demystify it. Feel free to do that if you want to. But let me go to Arun and see what he thinks about it quickly.
Sure. So product manager with strong data. I think that's a possible path to data science management. I cannot disagree. So there are many ways to, paths to data science itself is varied, right? You can be an engineer, you can become a data science guy. You can be a statistician, you can become a data science guy, and you can be like, business analyst, can get into data science. So even path to data science itself is like varied. It comes from different areas. So I think the convergence can happen from many different areas. So product manager is also one of the ways. And obviously, I think probably one of the reasons why people think it's important. I'm not a product manager. I come from a stats, a computer science, math background into data scientist. So I'm not a great example. Maybe Muthu might be an example, but even in this panel, we have people coming from different backgrounds.
That's right.
Into the data science. So, and product management definitely it brings in, because a product know-how is super critical for not just a data science manager, for any manager for that perspective. So it is very critical. So to me, I think.
So you're saying it's one of the paths, not necessarily the path, and yes, there are multiple of them, but it's a critical role that one needs to have. So good one. I think instead of going to that, there are many such polls that we'll bring up, and I'll pick one of you to give your comment. One of the things is let's just take a look at the other poll, which talks about lots of cliches about the title itself, right? When you say data science manager, there are people who say that oh, this is no different than being just another people manager, except that now you're managing data scientists, right? Or data teams. So let's just get audience perspective again on which of these are cliches, right? Or rather least believable. I think that's a key part here. There are all these cliches, but least believable according to our audience, right? And I'd encourage folks to quickly vote. I see very low voting percentage. And I know it might take a few seconds to read through the answers, so that's okay, right? If you can get to about 60%, I think we can fairly assume that the audience is engaged, and very well engaged rather. Good. So what's trending right now is close neck to neck. I think several people seem to say that, look, hey, I've had 10 years experience or 10 years plus experience in engineering, in project management, in program management, whatever it is. It looks like I may have missed the data science manager bus, right? Now, Saurabh, what do you think of this notion or this thinking?
Sure, Sai. So I think I'll connect the last question to this particular poll. So data science is a program that a data science manager has to manage. It's an entire ecosystem. It's not, and product is one part of it. When you connect, when you whatever work you do, you connect, you build machine learning models, and then you connect to the business goals, and then you build the benefit story. So that's a product side of this entire program. And the knowledge on data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, all those good fancy stuff in the market, it's of course a one aspect of this role. But how do you carry that big picture? How do you drive this entire function within an organization? That is something which is the core of this role, the data science manager role. Now, the second poll question was around someone who has 10 years of experience. So it's no biggie. You can of course get into the data science manager role, but the ability to articulate different things, the technology, the machine learning analytics and artificial intelligence, plus the business in different terms in whatever forums you are in, that basically defines the data science manager role. You do not have to be hands-on day in, day out. It's not the mandate, but if you are, then it's very good. And in the last session, I was hearing David speaking out on how much of machine learning and AI goes into just selecting a biryani. So that makes me realize that, of course, it's a key essence of this role is, but if you have the ability to articulate that in business terms and connect multiple dots together, platform, data, technology and analytics, and then product, it's something which is a key key ask for this from this role is.
So you're of the viewpoint that yes, of course, some of the technical skills are required, and I think probably, I don't know if you guys can correct me, that enough working knowledge of the data skills, plus a lot of business context and your customer context is absolutely. So that's a good segue into our conversation, right? So, and I also saw one of the responses that, hey, data science seems to be applicable only for technology industry. So would you agree, Saurabh? Because you, coming from, I want to go back to you and get your perspective on that.
Right. So I've been into this field for quite some time, and I've worked with large capital units. Like I started with, in my analytics journey with ABB, and then started with I was with Oracle, and then with G, and now with Michelin. And these are all non-tech companies. I mean, non-tech in the sense that they are not known for IT and softwares. The technology innovation track is entirely different. But then there is a lot of things that is happening on this side of the world. Because we hold a lot of data. These companies hold a lot of data, and in order to achieve or retain that competitive advantage, we need to make sense of that data. So the focus is not entirely on the domestic product development or commercial products, or say providing these analytical services, but in-house, how we are building these capabilities in order to make that decision-making ability to be smart. How are we empowering our customer-facing and the front-facing frontliners to give them the lever of data plus some additional insights plus some additional intelligence, so that they stay smart, they know what they are doing it, and they do not rely on approximations. End of the day, they have the factful information. And then how do they deal in their business? Day-to-day business is something that is very relevant in the manufacturing industry, and same holds for retail industry. So and if you see in the last session, it was a food intelligence, which is entirely different from what we see of human intelligence or artificial intelligence. How do you induce that intelligence in the food industry is again very important.
So picking up on that, Muthu, to what extent do you believe the subject matter expertise, right? So every industry that we talk about needs somebody to have a deep subject matter understanding, domain understanding, as you call it, right? So if you are in a company that is making products for pharmaceutical industry, you really need to know have a really good understanding and experience of the drug discovery process and the testing process, because you need to identify attributes and variables. So to what extent is that the most important thing, when you look for somebody to get into data science manager role, along with some of the technical skills that we talked about?
Right. So from my experience of working with the data scientist folks and the data science management folks, is that there is primarily the three different aspects to the role, which is basically the one aspect is the data understanding or making sense about the data thinking to it. The second one, that would already include your mathematical statistical ability. And the second one is the tool that you can use to, quickly come up with your hypothesis for the data, or even use the tool to actually build the model that the business is looking for. So that is the tool knowledge. And the third one is the domain knowledge, right? So soft skill is part of every role, that is absolutely important. But then if we pick the three key elements, the technical piece to it, and then the data understanding, the data piece to it, and the domain piece to it. So if I have to rank them, I would still say that from my understanding of working with them, it is basically the data piece at the top, the ability to relate to the data and having the data-based thinking stays at the top. Then comes the ability to use technology, because technology is also, fast, rapid changing, and you have to keep yourself on top of it. Then comes the domain knowledge, because with domain knowledge, the product managers, the subject matter experts can
They're
still
already there.
exactly, they can still back the data managers with the required understanding that he needs to have to drive him through that path to arrive at the right hypothesis.
So you're saying you don't have to be an SME or domain expert. There should be a domain expert in your.
He need not become an SME in that area. He will need to have a good amount of understanding, but together with the other stakeholders who are designated to do that, he can still be successful in his role.
Great. So Arun, given that you have built several teams from the scratch, especially data teams, what do you think is a good composition, a right composition? So typically you have what? I mean, data team, you might have analysts, engineers, data engineers, and data scientists, right? And other roles, and you can explain what those are. But what is the right composition of identifying a really good team?
Okay. The first composition, I will say, instead of composition, I would say kind of skill sets which we are looking for, because if you call someone as a data engineer, it doesn't necessarily that he does only engineering. I mean, there are a lot of aspects to it. Instead, I'll focus on what are the different skill sets someone needs.
So just sorry to interrupt. I think we'll definitely need to talk about skill set. What I was bringing in is mostly about the typical titles or roles that people call.
Got it.
Right? So
got it.
From that point of view, let's start from that point of view, and we'll get to the skills part.
Sure, definitely. I think a typical data science, I don't call a differentiate. So I'm like someone who believes in this pod system, where you take up maybe a use case, business use case, and then multiple people who are working on the pod basically are part of it. Like, so take a particular use case, even in the food thing which we saw on Swiggy. So you basically have a data, obviously everything starts and ends with data in data science or anything. So you'll probably have a product person who would actually bring in the use case to you, which basically says, hey, this is the problem. And probably a business person who's actually the stakeholder. The stakeholder starts with, and then you would probably have a data engineer who will build the pipeline into it. And then obviously data scientists or machine learning engineers would actually be the person who would do the implementation of any kind of algorithm and stuff. And then the last, which is very critical, which is super important, which is the most difficult part in data science, is not building these models and stuff, but how do you take this into production? So you'll actually need DevOps. And then tech ops, DevOps and tech ops will work with you. And then the last part of it is the hosting team, which basically glues everything together and takes everything, whatever you do, into production. And over a period of time, I have seen in the journey of data science, data scientists have been like someone who's like had been in silos. They work on the separate team and stuff, and then they take it to the DevOps, and then they say, okay, they take it from there and do it. But there are a lot of things which have improved where data scientists themselves can deploy into models like, say, modern techniques have come like SageMaker, like in Azure. I mean, a lot of tools which have been started coming into the data science world, which removes the dependency on some of this operation stuff. But I still like a composite team will have all these people. So.
And when you assemble such a team, I think it's very critical for the success of these projects. What is the crucial role that the data science manager plays in this setup?
So, I mean, data science manager, obviously, just like any other manager, they are the glue between all the different teams and bringing the teams together and stuff. In other words, data science manager is someone who would have to wear multiple hats depending on what conversation. So you are in a conversation with business people, you have the business hat. You are with product people, you have the product hat. And then you are with your data scientist, you are a research hat. And then, things like that. So he's this person who basically can converse in the language which is familiar to each and every different parts of the team. So very important role in many ways. And obviously, to me, from a perspective, if you're managing a bunch of data scientists, to me, the number one goal is to be, how do you motivate the team? How do you continuously motivate the team? So one of the, data scientists, it's true with any other team, is that you get bored. You're working on a set of problems, and then
unless you give them the big picture, the business outcomes that they are going to impact with the projects, the work that they are doing.
Absolutely. Right? Basically, you need to make sure, motivate the team and say, how are you individually moving the needle for the company? You have to relate everything to the company. That's important.
Yeah, and that is on one side. And by the way, Saurabh, you can take what you would do to convince and communicate and keep the business stakeholders going, right? Otherwise, in many companies, leadership teams are still yet to be aware clearly about the timelines that it might take to see the business outcomes using data and data analytics. So you need to keep that evangelism going on, I suppose, right? Is that something that you often do with your leadership teams?
Right. So in my role, and in fact, and that's my experience, that as a data science manager, someone who is leading this crew, I'm partnered with the product management. So whatever the business objectives and charters they lay out for the entire year, I work with them to see that how much pace and velocity I need to adopt within my team to address these asks from the business. Then I am the stakeholder for the data platform teams. Although I do have the team members who can very well work with the data engineers, but I define what the requirements of ML operations are. I define what is the end goal of, the AI models have to be consumed. So I'm the stakeholder for one team. I'm partner with different team, and that's how this entire equation works. And what I learned from these two, leaders from platform and from the product management, I relay them to my team so that we have our priorities right.
So you're looking at a product management team as a proxy to the business leadership team, so that they can go and explain the ROI, the progress that is being made, and when the potential outcomes might be, right?
So for the product line, that comes from the product management. In terms of evangelization, we do many innovation programs, and that we evangelize as part of our team. So we also need to take care or keep an eye on how does AI transformation, the levels of AI transformation looks into the company. And that is where the outbound product management comes into picture, that usually the analytics drives. So we do a lot of road shows, we do a lot of, evangelization sessions, and the products that we have built along with the product management team, we take them forward and say that what was the problem statement and how analytics and how this machine learning solve this problem.
Got it.
And just a last point to add, say, so in companies which are very legacy companies and 100-year-old organizations like GE and Michelin, the cultural transformation plays a big role. It's not about me coming to the
at the role of. Do you see top-down mandates helping in such organizations?
Yes, it does. It does. So there are, we talk about non-IT and non-software, non-analytics technology taking the, first place.
Yeah.
But then how do you convince them that analytics can actually beautify your entire solution, can be more smart, can be more intelligent, right? So that's where there's a lot of evangelization that we do. And very recently we have started, some of the things around democratization. How do we give them touch and feel experience? How do, we build some quick prototype?
Yeah, I think I'll come to that. We want to touch upon some of those. So just about when I was going to ask some product question, I saw Muthu disappear. I'm glad that you're back, Muthu. So what has been your experience in terms of the upward management, right? Is very important, especially when you're working on data projects. While Arun said that it's crucial that you keep the data team motivated by giving them visibility into the potential business outcomes. What it was your experience in as a product manager managing upwards?
Yeah. So I think the product teams working with the data teams, right? So there is it works both ways. So one is like as Saurabh mentioned that when we start to work on a use case, we get this use case to the data science managers, to the data science team, so that they can analyze this. We get the relevant data to them, and they are looking on to whether this data can actually help to build a better solution or make the solution even more powerful and helping that use case based on what we brought to them, right? So that's one way of working. And the other way is also that they are also actively, the data science teams are also actively looking at the data that the product is producing, because in several organizations the product is in place for many years already. So the data science teams are also able to individually go dig into this different data sources. Where is the product operation data? Where are the qualitative surveys being stored? Where is the NPS records that we are storing? Feature usage that is there. All these records. They are going also and actively digging out all these sources to look at the reverse way of, they are able to also come up with, this is the new innovation that the business can pursue. And that gets into the
that's very important, because now you have their buy-in
exactly
to some extent, right? So we'll come to the buy-in part, which is important. So Arun was about to mention things around skill sets, right? So before we get to your points of view, I want to take a quick poll from the audience about what do they think in terms of what skill sets are, what are the most critical skills that are necessary, at least from what the audience is thinking here, right? So now, obviously, this is not a whole exhaustive list, but this is what one keeps hearing anytime you talk about a data science manager role, right? Some of them are technical, and I'd probably go to you to say what is lumped together potentially in that leadership skills. What are the line items, if you will, in that leadership skills that may be required to do that? So clearly, by the way, this is a multiple choice, so you can choose as many as you think are relevant. It's not just one thing. It looks like majority of the folks, not surprising, data analysis and business understanding, both are absolutely critical for this data science. So this is a very, very, I would say, educated audience that we are talking here about, and which I'm glad that we have that audience joining these sessions. So now, Arun, given this, perspective or insight that you got from the audience, are there any other skills that you think are missing here, or would you think that this role might need?
I'm just looking at it. It looks like it covers most of it. Obviously, business, machine learning, programming. Okay, I think I will basically want to separate one of the skills. Also, it could be mixed bag in this is ability to kind of story tell. Like, it's basically, it's very fundamental in the sense, you take these problems and stuff, like this is basically goes back to my thing of how do you have multiple ads and talk to these people, right? Like, so you have to actually change the jargon. Like, say, for example, you talk about precision and recall when you're sitting with your data scientist, and then you go to say that use the same jargon with business, you're like complete, you're actually lost them in the first 10 minutes itself.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
you need to have this ability to kind of distill very complex things which which your team is doing, in order to kind of bring it back and tell them exactly what it is. So in other words, it's basically a data science manager role, or anyone in leadership role.
Yeah.
It's multidimensional, so
It's
obviously
cross-functional is what we call, right? It's a
yeah, exactly,
cross-functional role, and hence you need to
absolutely,
learn the vocabulary of the
yes,
team that you are talking to, and not
exactly.
go with the same vocabulary and language and jargons, as you said.
Yeah, that's very very
Absolutely.
important. And then the one of the other biggest skill sets would be
Hmm.
to very very important, I think it's very common across, which is important, is to ability to I wouldn't want to say evangelize, but ability to kind of convincingly put forth your requirements and across the board and stuff. So what happens in a typical scenario is that the business comes in, and then they tell, okay, this is the use case, and I have a go to market strategy, these are all the things which you want to do. And you need to have a very good understanding of the business, which is very important. And then you also need to understand what are the timeline of your data science team to deliver something, also your operations to deliver something, so that you actually kind of the person who can actually set expectations across the board to make sure that a project is successful. So because business will have, say, I want something in like 2 weeks, and then and they'll basically say, because they are like, hey, I need some solution because my competitor is doing it, their strategy is there. And then you need to basically kind of bring them down or set the expectations, right? Because hey, if you don't even have the data for it, like how do you expect us to solve it, right? And then if you go to operations, and then they say, oh, we don't have any bandwidth to take over like anything new and then like put something in. So there is like all these people, everyone has their different set of expectations, they have their own scrum cycles and doing it. How do you bridge all these things together? I think if you look at it operational wise, I think that's not, I think that's completely missing here, is that one of the biggest skills is to how do you have the acumen to operationalize something? Very very
So
critical.
that itself is a challenge. And now when at least more relevant to our audience is, how does the talent pool look like to hire right now? Because you all built these teams, you hired people into these roles, and you started yourself in these roles. Today, if you were to hire, do you see there is enough talent pool that you can draw from to this role? I'm not talking about data scientists, we're not talking about data analysts, right? But we're talking about data science manager itself. So Saurabh, what do you say in India, especially? What's the situation like?
Yeah, I think, of course. So I was going to, I was part of few of the forums where we did some market analysis around what's the take, or what's the number of talent pool in India, specifically around the senior data scientist or lead data scientist who have the potential to move into the data science manager. And in 2018, I can quote some numbers. So they were around 60% of the sample size, which was good 500 companies, they responded that there is absolutely scarcity of the data science management role. People don't understand that there's a difference between data analysis and data analytics. Data analysis is a very small portion of entire data analytics. Data analytics encompasses your data management, data architecture, then data science, and how do you put that or scale this AI model to production, right? So, and data analysis, if there is a senior data analyst, is he capable of moving into data science management role or not? But the number in 2019 came down to 40%, which said that people who are making use of the online courses and digital platforms and covering up the learning around data science, machine learning, and AI, and catching up with the platforms.
So there is bridging of that gap going on a little bit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And this is even more important in India, because I think if you look at it, there is a huge number of people in India traditionally in business analysis roles. And some of them have moved from BA to calling themselves at least as data analysts, right? And some of them are truly, but majority of them. And now, given the skill gap and the talent gap, it's good that these talent creation platforms and institutes are bridging that gap. So you are saying that all is not lost. We are getting more people.
We are getting more people, but just that you may be, so one may be good in data science skill set and he qualifies to be there at the data science manager, but whether he'll be able to do that storytelling or not, whether he can fit into that business environment or not, or whether he can provide that people leadership skills or analytics leadership skills to the teams or not, right? So that's where I've seen few of the organizations who, hire people with the lead data analyst role and, incubate them and for some time and make them, comfortable in working in that large environments, working along with different teams. And then they slowly move them to the data science manager role. Straight away getting them into it requires, a lot of qualifications, considerations around their technical skill sets, and then whether have they held the people management, people leadership roles in the past or not.
There's a fascinating information, right? And I just came across that 2 days ago. Veracity needs to be verified, and no offense to any data scientists in the room here, but apparently data science managers are now making 40% more than data scientists. We're not talking about very high-end data scientists, but people who 3-4 years into data science, right? So there is a huge demand and supply gap in data science management. So Arun, when you are looking at this, what strategies are you looking at to hire these people?
Sure. I mean, to me, whether it's data science management or anything, the first thing to me is passion for doing things with data. Very, very fundamental. I mean, you have to be, I see myself in them in the sense, I want a lot of passion about, I want to do something with data and stuff. Data affinity or whatever you call, that is very, very fundamental to me. And then as far as management is concerned, I come from a company which basically Workday is really, really famous for its lot of the training we do for data science management roles, not just data science management, just management in general. And then we treat management as more like people management to a great extent. To me, you can have the best data scientists in the world, but people management skills are a whole different ball game in itself. Like, so for example, just because a particular data scientist is like awesome, he's great, he's producing probably he's the most productive person, and then take him and make him a manager. It's like making Tendulkar.
We've gone through this with software engineers, hardware engineers, where we've taken rock star engineers and made them poor managers, right? And they turn out to be, that's not what they're cut out for, right? And
exactly.
It is unfortunate that is happening in data science again.
Absolutely. So the example I gave was making Tendulkar as the captain, right? Because you take a principal data scientist and make him a manager. His expectations the thing is that it is a democratic setup, right? When you become a manager, your expectations from everyone in your team should be a democratic way. But if you make a principal data scientist to be the manager, then he's expecting he's expecting a principal data science from each and every one.
Right.
So that's very important. So people management skills are, to me, at the top of the list for someone to become a data science manager, because a very, very successful manager who has managed teams, not necessarily data science teams, will be much more successful in becoming a data science manager and stuff. Now, having said that, so data affinity first, I mean, to me, high priority. Second would be the people management skills. And the third, which I always believe, which is across, is the ability for someone to say, how do I identify someone? Imagine I have a team of bunch of senior data scientists and then working, and then I need to pick a manager out of them to lead the team. So first is what I look for, how do they rally the team? Even when they work as a senior data scientist and stuff, how great a team player is he? Like, how do they rally the team? How do they bring in together everyone?
More of now in influencing and inspiring the team, which gets into your leadership realm, right?
Exactly. So you in other words, very simply, there is a notion in Workday, which is very, very important. Like whenever you think about promotion or changing the role of someone, first thing they talk about is this person already performing that role in his current role? He might be a senior data scientist or principal data scientist. Is he performing the role of a management? Like, is he bringing the team together? Is he rallying people? Is he, a team player, and all the necessary skills of a management? Is he already exhibiting today? Then, he's a candidate for becoming a manager. So he's already showing signs of leadership. Okay, let him make. So that's
Yeah.
the idea.
So which is very similar to, or at least ideally it should have happened even in the other engineering roles, which we kind
Absolutely.
of mastered it, but now we need to have the data affinity, as you said. The person should really
Oh, yeah.
be in that data. Absolutely. So coming to, I think there is a very common discussion that happens, at least I hear, is when you say, how is data science management any different if you're working in product teams? And by the way, Muthu, going to you, if you're working on a consumer product versus a business or an enterprise user product, right? We typically call it as B2C and B2B. In what ways do we think? So before we get to that, you answer that. Let's just take a quick poll from our audience to see what they think about it, right? So, it'll be good to know, see if we keep using these words, B2C, B2B, B2B, B2C, and all of that. So is there any difference, or, what kind of differences potentially? Folks, come on, we need more voting. I think there's a very low voting percentage. Again, I'm just trying to keep you going here. I know dinner is being served on the table. Kids might be waiting. Just a few more minutes, and I'm sure we'll get to, this conclusion, interesting discussion happening here.
We have been having a long day.
I know. I can totally imagine that, and I truly appreciate folks who've been, joining these sessions. There are people that they've told me that every single day, every single session they've attended, which is just incredible, right?
Yes.
So good. So you see quickly that B2C products allow for, so by the way, it's again a multiple choice. So, no one answer is right or wrong here. It's more of an insight that we want to gather from the audience here. Awesome. 63% voted, which means we still have the audience glued and engaged. So thanks to you guys, by the way. Right. Okay. So Muthu, what do you think? Your perspective on this based on what you just saw?
Sure, perfect. So I see the standing one here being the B2C products allowing rapid experimentation. Actually, that is the case for, in general, the difference between the B2B and the B2C area. Because in the B2B area, typically we deal with a relatively less number of customers, because each customer is a big unit by themselves, right? Versus in B2C, the way in which we can experiment, there is a lot more, and how we can reach out to the different customers, end users, is relatively easier, and we can do a lot more experimentation. And that is a reflection of the voting that we are seeing here as well. Versus if I specifically come on to the data elements, when a data science model is being built, for me as a company, let's say if we are building a product for B2C versus a B2B product, for example, Swiggy. So Swiggy is Swiggy's customers are directly doing transaction in the app, and hence the AI behind the biryani order, all that we saw in the last session as well. It's actually one model that is sitting behind that product, which is learning continuously. Whereas, let's say, assume me as SAP, and me shipping a product to a customer. Right, my customers are actually doing transactions with their customers. Right, so there the model that you are shipping is completely different. Fundamentally, architecture level, this whole thing is
a completely very important difference.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So in this case, the model itself will become a multi-tenant model, as we call. So there is multiple instances of the model. Right. So for each customer, it is a different transaction, and even more, the added complexity comes in. For example, the data itself could differ in each of these customers. That means exactly the model goes and learns differently in each of these customer companies, and hence taking a different decision for a company A versus company B.
I think that's the fundamental difference.
Exactly.
While people talk about volume of data, disparity of data, all of that is true. But I think fundamentally what you're saying is, in many cases, not all cases again, many cases, if you are a customer is a business who is who has another customer, right?
Exactly.
Then these models are going to collect different attributes data, are also going to behave different or make decisions different.
Right.
Awesome. So, but then, isn't that going to make the job of the data team or even a product management team more complicated in convincing your management and getting their buy-in in doing these multiple ways to address the customers? How is that? I'm just asking, is that easy or difficult?
No, so what happens is while the data is going to differ and the companies are different, etc., right? But we are still talking about one industry, one domain. So in this case, in the B2B example that I was saying, so the similarity here is that all of those customers belong to a certain industry, doing certain type of transactions. Hence, I'm able to do that ML pipeline when I'm doing my product. I can have that base pipeline that talks about, this is the sequence. These are the data that I'm looking forward to learn. But then how it learns and what it learns is going to differ on the field. Hence, there are operational challenges. But then when it comes to the business case itself, when I look at the domain or the industry, I can still make a business case and convince my stakeholders, for example.
Awesome. So Saurabh, so now I'll just move into some of the audience questions that are coming in. And
Sure.
I think, so Sonal Chauhan from HCL is asking, what is the scope of data science manager role in India? Do you see that growing? And is that even a role if somebody doesn't want to move into people management?
Of course, yes, it's a role. So I'll just throw some numbers again on the potential of data science market in India. So a few weeks back there was a survey report from Praxis Business School, and the potential of data science and analytics in India is the market cap is $30 billion. And out of $30 billion, $27 billion is just for the services, while $3 billion is on the product development.
Wow.
So when you talk about services, right? So there is someone who has to maneuver the entire team, the balance, and front face those discussions. So of course, there's a lot of opportunity in that space. Specifically talking about data science management role, someone who can understand data science and gamuts of machine learning and AI, and then translate that into a business relevant language. And when you're working in partnership with the product management teams, then how do you explore the possibility of analytics play? So of course there's scope, there's a lot of scope, but it all depends on whether we have that right mix of data science skills in that. And as Arun mentioned and Muthu also mentioned, it's very clear that we need to have that ability to tell the stories, and explain the magic. The AI should not be black box.
Never go away, whatever you come from, right? Especially when you are in interfacing role with multiple stakeholders, this becomes absolutely critical.
And we need to understand we are all in the business of data. So AI is nothing more just the business of data, right? The way we explain it. And the sophistication, if we are able to explain, it becomes very simple. And
as Arun said, in the vocabulary, in the language of the person, the team that you're talking to. Awesome. So Suraj D is asking, and this is to you, Arun, is how do you judge or test the candidates by their skills in the process of recruitment? I'm sure you have some hiring strategies, and while you articulated that data affinity, people management, those are things that you're looking for. Are there any more specific clues that you can give? Maybe Suraj wants to join Workday, so hopefully.
Sure, definitely. So I mean, obviously, I think it's specific to a data science manager. I believe that's the role we are talking about, and I already articulated data and other things, right? So other thing which I pretty much always look for is in their past projects, what is their contribution towards any project? Like again, like the team component comes to very big one. To me, I believe a team player is like someone already slated for success in a management role. So I want to basically figure out their enthusiasm about a project and what is their role and how do they, I mean, they might not have been in management before, but they are like already performing at that level, not just necessarily within Workday, even outside. So that is one of the, that criteria doesn't go away. I still look for that kind of a team player kind of, so I want them to be And then I also wanted to see one of the skill sets. Usually what I do is, hey, tell me about a project you're talking about. And I want them to know, like they might have played a very small part, or like they might have been the person who actually built the model. But I wanted them to tell me exactly end to end how the story begins and how that ends. You know, like where the business case starts, how
So you
the
do look
business.
for an end-to-end understanding of a
Oh yeah.
in the project.
The life cycle. They
Very
could have,
important.
see, you worked on a project to basically do, say, churn prediction, for example, right?
Yeah.
I'm expecting them to understand the end-to-end story of it. Like the business comes and says, hey, I want to understand how my advertisers are churning.
Yeah.
And then like, what is the data? So they have to understand the business problem. They have to explain me the business problem and how they converted the business problem into a data problem. And then how they converted the data problem into a data solution, which means all the, you know, algorithm. And once it becomes a business solution, how do they make it into a business data solution? How do they make it into a business solution?
Super.
And how do they end up into a product? So that story, you know,
I
needs
think
to be
that's
very
a
clear.
very prescriptive, very clear way of how to approach this. Now, so you know, we are really on the top of the hour. I think this is super useful discussion. Thank you all for doing this. I'm sure there are lots of people who have benefited.